Well, having a little bit more fun today, we got this clip here of Elon Musk completely slaughtering a BBC reporter in an interview and calls him out. And the reason why I want to bring attention to this clip is because you see this from woke libs all the time, where they'll make a claim, even though Elon Musk is giving him the opportunity to utilize his anecdotal claim, meaning his own self-claim of what he's experienced in his own life. But what we see is they'll make a claim and then they're never able to support it, even with Give one example, and they can't do it. Let's go ahead and roll it. If you haven't hit that like and subscribe button, folks, support a true American patriot by doing so. Leave us a comment down below. Are you an Elon Musk fan?
Free speech is meaningless unless you allow people you don't like to say things you don't like. Otherwise, it's irrelevant. And if at the point at which you lose free speech, it doesn't come back.
I think the issue some people have is that a lot of people were brought back. I mean, some people were brought back who were previously banned for spreading things like QAnon conspiracies. You have people like Andrew Tate who were brought back, who were previously banned for things like hate speech. Do you think you prioritize freedom of speech over misinformation and hate speech?
Well, you know, who's to say that something is misinformation? Who's the arbiter of that? Is it the BBC?
You're literally asking me?
Yes.
Well, no, you are the arbiter on Twitter, because you own Twitter.
Yes, I'm saying, who is to say that one person's misinformation is another person's information? At the point at which you say that there is, this is misinformation, like, who is going to decide that?
But you accept that misinformation can be dangerous, that it can cause real-world harms, that it can potentially cause...
Yes, and the point I'm trying to make is that the BBC itself has, at times, published things that are false. Do you agree that that has occurred?
I'm quite sure the BBC have said things before that turn out to not be true. In its, whatever it is, 100-year history, I'm quite sure.
Yes. Even if you aspire to be accurate, there are times when you will not be.
We've spoken to people very recently who were involved in moderation, and they just say there's not enough people to police this stuff, particularly around hate speech in the company.
What hate speech are you talking about? I mean, you use Twitter.
Right.
Watch this key segment right here, folks. This is where he completely destroys him, and this is where the woke libs, these progressive left that want to sit there and regulate your speech. And when you start regulating speech on the levels that they want to, no longer do you have free speech anymore. And you're seeing this movement on where the Democrat Party and progressive left and the Biden administration literally has already come out and said they want to remove your assault weapons. By removing your assault weapons, what they really mean is the semi-automatic firearms, which is virtually everything. So once they start chiseling away and get to furthering removing that Second Amendment right, that's when they will really go hell-bent on removing that First Amendment right, and now you're screwed. And that's exactly what Elon Musk was starting off with, was once you don't have free speech, it's gone and it's never going to come back. Watch how he obliterates this guy right here.
Do you see a rise in hate speech?
I mean,
but just a personal anecdote. Like, what do you? I don't.
Personally, for you, I would see I get more of that kind of content. Yeah, personally. But I'm not going to talk to the rest of for the rest of Twitter.
So you see more hate speech personally?
I would say I would see more hateful content in that.
Content you don't like or hateful? What do you mean to describe a hateful thing?
Yeah, I mean, you know, just content that will solicit a reaction, something that may include something that is slightly racist or slightly sexist, those kinds of things.
So you think if something is slightly sexist, it should be banned?
No,
is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying anything. I'm
just curious. I'm trying to understand what you mean by hateful content, and I'm asking for specific examples. And you just said that if something is slightly sexist, that's hateful content. Does that mean that it should be banned?
Well, you've asked me whether my feed, whether it's got less or more. I'd say it's got slightly more.
That's why I'm asking for examples. Can you name one example?
I honestly don't use. Honestly, I don't.
You can't name a single example.
I'll tell you why. Because I don't actually use that for you feed anymore. Because I.
We're going to continue here, but you're going to see this guy fumble through his words like he's Joe Biden or somebody from the Biden administration, like Karine Jean-Pierre or John Kirby. And he's going to walk back what he's saying. He's going to start applying it in different directions. The reason why I also want to highlight the fact of this guy using something anecdotal but can't explain one experience that he's had is because the progressive left do the exact same thing in terms of systemic racism. They'll just say, well, there's systemic racism out there. Okay, well, what are those systems and who in those systems are the actual racists? Like, who implemented them so we can band together and actually solve the issue, which is what you have Elon Musk trying to do here in terms of hate speech or whatever, going, hey, well, what exactly are you experiencing? Because he's trying to fix it. That's how this guy operates. He's in his head, he's trying to figure out, okay, this guy's talking about hate speech, talking about free speech, he's talking about misinformation. So obviously he doesn't like that. So how can I fix a problem that a customer of mine is having? And maybe we can resolve it. I mean, Elon Musk is obviously calling out his BS, but the progressive left will do this on many, many fronts here. Well, they'll make a giant claim about something. Oh, well, there's hate speech out there. Okay, well, what is hate speech and where and how are you experiencing this? Give me specific examples so we can fix it. There's systemic racism out there. Okay, well, what are those systems? What are those companies that are pushing systemic racism and oppressing people through that systemic racism so that we can look into that corporation and see what regulations they have or what laws are on the books for that state or that county or that locality, whatever it may be? Who are the people that instituted those laws or those regulations or those rules in those corporations, cities, and states? And so we could find those people and work together to get rid of that racism, because we all agree that racism is evil. But when you start talking about regulating people's speech, you get into some really dicey territory there, because it's all about feelings. If you notice that, well, I feel this, I feel that. And when you get into regulating something that you feel, everybody's feelings are different. And not only that, everybody's feelings are different in every moment and every time. I mean, how many emotions do you go through throughout a day, which there have been studies on? Women go through vast majority more emotions throughout the day than a typical male does. But we can't talk about that even anymore, because no longer are you male or female, right? Now you can be gender fluid. You can move in between all sorts of things. It's nonsense. But key point here is shout something to the skies, not be able to support it with one iota of an example, even if it's anecdotal.
Just don't particularly like it.
But you said
actually, a lot of people are quite similar. I only look at
hang on a second.
following.
You said you've seen more hateful content, but you can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah,
Well, then how did you see that hateful content?
Because I've been using Twitter since you've taken it over for the last 6 months.
Okay, so then you must have at some point seen for you hateful content. I'm asking for one example.
Exactly.
Right.
One
And
example.
You can't give a single one.
And I'm saying
Then I say so that you don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
Yes, because you can't give me a single example of hateful content, not even one tweet, and yet you claimed that the hateful content was high.
Well,
that's false.
No, what I claimed...
You just lied.
What I claimed was there are many organizations that say that kind of information.
See how he's changing it now? You see this all the time from the progressive left. And I'm actually gonna talk about the book real quick, because there is a transcript in here between Malcolm Nance and Ben Shapiro when they're on a TV show called Real Time with Bill Maher, and they're talking about critical race theory. And we go through the transcript on how at first Malcolm Nance agrees with Ben Shapiro, and then as Ben Shapiro destroys him in the same way Elon Musk is destroying this gentleman from the BBC, they will switch the definition, and they will also change what they said. And then you see this happening in real time. Pick yourself up a copy, folks. It's called Trojan Horse, How the Left is Destroying America. You're seeing it in real time while this guy's lying straight to Elon Musk's face, making something up that didn't actually happen. Now, maybe it did happen in real life, but he doesn't have any supporting evidence of it. And if something was such a big impact on your life and you're experiencing it just all the time anecdotally, you would think that you'd have at least one idea of something that was said on your Twitter feed that made you just feel uncomfortable. But it's hate speech, it's misinformation, it's disinformation, it's Russian disinformation.
Is on the rise. Now, whether it has on my feed or not, I mean, right, and
literally
if you look at something
one.
like the Strategic Dialogue Institute in the UK, they will say that. So
look, people will say all sorts of nonsense. I'm literally asking for a single example, and you can't name one.
Right, and as I've already said, I don't use that feed. But
then how would you know that?
I don't think this is getting anywhere.
You literally said you experienced more hateful content, and then couldn't name a single example.
Right, and as I said,
that's absurd.
I haven't actually looked at that feed.
Then how would you know there's hateful content?
Because I'm saying that's what I saw a few weeks ago. I can't give you an exact example. Let's move on. We only have a certain amount of time. COVID misinformation. You changed the COVID misinformation.
Has
rules.
BBC changed its COVID misinformation?
The BBC does not set the rules on Twitter, so I'm asking you.
No, I'm talking about the BBC's misinformation about COVID.
Silence.
I'm literally asking you about, you changed the labels, the COVID misinformation labels. There used to be a policy, it then disappeared. Why do that?
Well, COVID is no longer an issue. Does the BBC hold itself at all responsible for misinformation regarding masking and side effects of vaccinations, and not reporting on that at all? And what about the fact that the BBC was put under pressure by the British government to change its editorial policy? Are you aware of that?
This is not an interview about the BBC.
Oh, so... you thought it wasn't?
I see now why you've done Twitter Spaces. I am not a representative of the BBC's editorial policy. I want to make that clear. Let's talk about something else. If you want to talk about the BBC.
Now he wants to talk about something else. So that's how it works, right? Is it's just, let's talk about something else. Let's move on to something else. Let's transition here. Let's do this. Let's do that. When it's like, look, man, you and whoever you're with, meaning the BBC, but other people, you're out there to sit there and regulate speech. Granted, it is the BBC, right? But even here in America, you're seeing the agenda of the progressive left, which is what we're trying to expose, the agenda to remove your rights and your liberties. Whenever you're thinking about instituting some sort of policy, you have to question, how does this affect somebody else's liberty? So when we're talking about the trans community, what are we instituting that's going to affect that person's liberty that wants to be trans? Now, from the most part, if there is an adult that wants to be trans, go be trans. If you want to lop off your genitals and castrate yourself, go do that. That is your life. It is not my life. In the same way, if you don't want to be religious, that's on you. I wish that you would pursue a faith and the great things that come along with it, not just the salvation, but the good types of morality and changing you as an individual and inherently allowing you to have a closer relationship with God than what you were previously. But that's for obviously another video. But I don't want to push my faith upon you. If you want to live out your own life, live out your own life. The issue is, again, you going after our children, you going after our rights to limit our speech, to limit the aspect of us bearing arms, to limit us being able to do what we want to do. And whenever we try to do what we want to do, whether that's through speech or different modes of carrying out our rights, is you want to sit there and tarnish that and ultimately remove it at some point. Now you're chiseling away at it, and you have been doing so for at least 100 years. I mean, going back to even FDR's time, about building government, making it even bigger, encroaching upon our rights would make our freaking founding fathers turn over in their graves if they heard what we're doing today. But the idea is, again, they want to chisel away your rights, they want to remove it, and then when you sit there and back them up, or back up your ideology, and you sit there and destroy their ideology by questioning their ideology, they want to sit there and transition away and don't want to actually talk about it anymore. You see that all the time, right? When you have a conversation with somebody and they're screaming at you, meaning a progressive leftist, and then you actually engage with them in conversation and disprove everything that they're saying, then all of a sudden, well, I'm uncomfortable. I don't want to talk about it anymore. That's how it works. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.